If I wanted to rank on both Google and AI 100% of the time, then these are the exact fundamentals that I would use in order to get there in less than 3 months. And these are the same fundamentals that I implement for every single one of my clients across 10 industries and 8 states. Let's get into it. Now, if you don't know me, I'm Matthew Johnson, and I currently help local service-based businesses in 10 plus niches across 8 states close more jobs through ranking on ChatGPT, including in pest control, law, dentistry, restoration, commercial and carpet cleaning, concrete and asphalt, you name it. I'm probably in that niche, and I have a client there that's currently crushing it on ChatGPT, and of course it also extends into Google. Now, if you want to find me, or if you just want access to this document so that you'd be able to go over it yourself, feel free to get it in the description, link to the description in the video below, and also pinned in the comments. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Of course, as I mentioned, scale your business using AI SEO. Here's my website. You can check out all of our clients, our testimonials, and the results that we've been able to achieve for them through these very same methods I'm going to go through in this video. Also, if this is the first time you've been seeing one of these videos, or maybe it's the first time you've heard of me, I have 8 other trainings much like this that will break down every single aspect of our service delivery. So you can probably just do it yourself, feed it to AI, or maybe even give one of your in-house employees as a method of training. And by the way, if I don't go into depth into a particular topic, it's probably covered in more depth in one of these other 8 lead magnets. So check them out. All right, let's get into it. So what is technical SEO? So let's start with the basics. SEO, of course, stands for search engine optimization. You probably know this by now, which is just a fancier way of saying making your website show up on Google and ChatGPT, right? But SEO has 3 main parts, and most people only focus on 1 or 2 of them, heavily on 1 of them. You have on-page SEO, which is basically the content on your website. These are your descriptions, your blog posts, your keywords, your titles. It's what most people think of when they hear SEO, right? Off-page SEO is about getting other websites to link to yours. These are called backlinks, and in some cases you can even call them citations, which I go over in one of my other documents. But this is like your vote of confidence from other sites telling, Google and ChatGPT that your site is trustworthy and valuable. And you're going to see it in the rest of this guide. I do this pretty often, but whenever I talk about Google, I'm also mentioning or referencing ChatGPT because both of them work in tandem. And what you will do fundamentally on Google will translate to ChatGPT and how you rank in there as well. So just keep that in mind. And then lastly, the third part is technical SEO, which is about making sure that Google can actually find, crawl, and understand your website. Because think of it like this. Let's say that you have a website, but nobody sees it. It might as well not even exist, right? Because the whole point of your website is for visibility and for people to see and trust you, right? So if it's not being seen, then there's no point of it. Hence why if the foundations and the fundamentals of technical SEO aren't done, then regardless of whether you want to try ranking or you want to rank on Google and ChatGPT, it will never happen because your site isn't properly indexed. And indexed just means found by these platforms, by these algorithms. And that's the entire point of this document, to make sure that you're being found properly by these relevant algorithms. So think of it like building a house, which is why the title of this is Foundations and Fundamentals, right? On-page SEO is the furniture and decorations. Off-page SEO is the neighborhood, your reputation, maybe your HOA in some cases. And then technical SEO is the foundation, plumbing, and electrical work. I'm talking to my plumbers, my electricians, and my foundation and repair guys out there right now, right? But you need all 3. But without a solid foundation, the house will collapse, right? And these are the 3 parts of SEO and the one nobody works on. So why does technical SEO matter more than you think? Even just based off of what you just heard on why it as the foundation is arguably the most important. Technical SEO is often the biggest constraint holding websites back from ranking higher. And I've seen it hundreds of times. I've done hundreds of audits. I've worked with scores and scores of home service businesses, local service-based businesses, SaaS businesses I've had in the past. The only ones I haven't done are e-com, but I'm sure that the same principles apply there. So a business owner comes to me frustrated because they've been writing blog posts, or their other SEO agencies have been writing blog posts for months, maybe even paying for backlinks, some of which can get very expensive, but their traffic isn't growing. And this is when I run a technical audit and find that half their pages aren't even indexed by Google. Remember what I said earlier? If they aren't indexed by Google, that means they might as well not exist because they haven't been found. Same thing for ChatGPT. Or maybe their site takes 8 seconds to load on mobile. And by the way, about 70 to 80% of your traffic is going to come from mobile users. So if your page takes 8 seconds to load, that's 7 seconds more than what you'd want before they just click off your site and go to someone else's, whose will load faster, and they essentially do the same thing as you, right? Or maybe they have duplicate content issues that are confusing Google about which pages to rank. These are all technical problems, and they're invisible to most business owners because they just don't know what to look for. You want to specialize in plumbing or electrical work, or maybe you're a dentist and you want to focus on cleanings and doing veneers. Maybe you're a restoration company who wants to focus on water damage restoration, not necessarily doing technical audits on your site. That's not your zone of genius, right? So you can't see them by just looking at your website, but Google sees them and they're killing your rankings. But the good news, technical SEO problems are usually the easiest to fix once you know what to look for. Unlike content creation or link building, which takes months of consistent effort, you can fix most technical issues in a weekend and see results within weeks. So that's why we're starting here. Fix your foundation first, then everything else you do will be 10 times more effective, right? And luckily, this guide is going to show you how to do it from A to Z, breaking down all the concepts, all these buzzwords that many people use in order to confuse you or in order to ultimately sell you something. I'm going to take care of all of that. But before going ahead, what do you need before starting? One, of course, you're going to need a website, right? You're going to need access to your website's back end, which basically just means the ability to make edits to your website. That's what you call a back end. You're going to need Google Search Console access. If you don't know how to do this, I'm going to go deeper into this further in the guide, but you're going to need this. And I go deeper into this in my SEO analytics and tools document, which again, you can get linked in the description, all 9 of them. And you're going to need about 4 to 8 hours of focused time. This isn't something that I'd recommend just leaving and then coming back to, leaving and coming back to. Be sure to bring your undivided attention to the task. And you can just do it while walking through this video. Maybe put it on 1.5 to 2x speed in the background and make sure that you're actively doing everything that I am breaking down because it's very actionable. And if you're one of the more scholastic types, you're a scholar out there, get a notepad or a spreadsheet because you're going to be taking some notes just in case you might want to do this for a friend of yours. And by the way, if you don't want to do any of this and you just want somebody to take care of this because you're not sure or you think your website isn't great, again, I can do this entirely for you. Done this for well over 30 clients by now and currently working with them still. Find it linked in the description, grab a time and let's get this done. But anyway, let's get into it. So you won't rank number 1 overnight necessarily by doing this. This is foundational work. It will make an insane difference in what you're doing. However, Rome wasn't built in a day is what I like to tell clients and prospects alike. It will take some time, but the thing about SEO is that it's compounding both local and through ChatGPT. So whatever you do now, within 8 weeks, 2 to 8 weeks, it will make an incredible difference. And as time passes, it will just get better, right? Some fixes are easy. Some may require a bit of help. If you have a web dev, you can bring them into this. And this is ongoing work, not a one-time fix. As I mentioned, this compounds. So you want to continuously be doing this and not necessarily just one and done, right? It's not a one-night stand, guys. Okay, so how do search engines actually work, right? There's a 3-step process that Google uses specifically, and you'd find that most of these other algorithms are built upon or similarly to Google's algorithms because of just how great it is. So to understand technical SEO, you first need to understand how Google works. Because most people think Google is just like out there on the internet, just randomly knows about every single website, when that's not how it works. It uses a 3-step process to find and rank websites, and each step is critical. So crawling, indexing, ranking. 2 of which you've probably heard, or maybe you've heard of all 3, but one doesn't work without the other. So crawling is basically Google sends out little programs called bots or spiders, or maybe even robots, you might have heard, that visits websites and follows links from page to page. So they think of them like robots, as I mentioned earlier, that click every link they can find. If Google's bot can't find your page or can't access it, that page doesn't exist as far as Google is concerned. Step 2 is indexing. So after Google crawls a page, it tries to understand what that page is about. It reads the content, looks at the images, analyzes the structure, and stores all that information in a massive database called the index. And this is like Google's library. If your page isn't in the index, it can't show up in search results. Now, this is a precursor to what we're going to touch on in this document, because if it reads the content and your content is too thin, or it looks at the images and realizes they're stock photos, or they're not properly annotated or not properly described, or maybe the structure is fundamentally incorrect, then these things would all cause your site or page not to be indexed. But we'll go into that at a later date. And then last is ranking. When someone searches on Google, Google looks through its index and decides which pages are most relevant and valuable for that search. It uses hundreds of factors to determine the ranking order. So technical SEO primarily affects steps 1 and 2, and then subsequently gets you rankings, right? I hope this image helps. Let me know if you guys like the images, by the way. I spend a lot of time with them. So you might be wondering, why does Google care about stuff like site speed, mobile optimization, and all this technical stuff? Why isn't good content enough? And it's simple. As a business owner, you're trying to get people to return time and time again. If you're an HVAC repair specialist, you want people, if after you fixed their HVAC systems, you want people in the event that there is another issue to come back to you because of the experience that you've provided them. You did such a good job that they're going to continuously call you. That is pretty much what Google is trying to achieve. If Google consistently ranks pages that are slow to load, are not mobile optimized, and don't have all of this technical stuff in place, then it's going to be less likely to rank you, because you're going to affect the user ranking or the user experience, which is going to cause less and less people to use Google, costing them customers and subsequently money. So this is exactly why Google does what it does. It's not random or anything. It's a business. So Google has a vested interest in ranking websites that provide a good user experience. That means websites that load fast, that work well on mobile phones, that are secure, that have good content and are easy to navigate, so on and so forth. When you fix technical SEO issues, you're not just checking boxes for Google. You're actually making your website better for real human visitors. And that's what Google rewards. So Google found that when a page takes longer than 3 seconds to load, 53% of mobile users abandon it. And that's more than half your potential visitors leaving before they even see your content. Technical SEO aligns your interests with Google's interests, and as a result does the same thing with AI, because the algorithms are very similar. If you're ranking poorly and have poor fundamentals on Google, then there's no way that ChatGPT is going to also recommend you. So here are a couple common technical SEO myths that we're going to debunk. So technical SEO is only for big websites, which isn't true. Even a 5-page website needs technical SEO. Myth 2, you need to know how to code. False. Especially in the era of AI, where AI can take care of most of the technical stuff as a part of its design and the amount of information that you can feed it. You could legitimately feed all of this document, which you can get linked in the description. You can feed this entire document to Claude and tell it to do an audit of your site, and it will do it and it will fix it as well. There are some aspects of it that you're going to need to have a bit of know-how when doing these audits and fixes, even with AI, but for the most part, it can take care of very simple things. So you don't even need to know how to code nowadays. Technical SEO is a one-time thing. Also not true, because your website is constantly changing. You're adding new pages. If you're on WordPress, you're updating plugins. You're adding new images that need to be technically sound. Like, this is just not true. It's never a one-time thing. It's continuous. And the more, let's say that the more diligent you are with this, the higher the chance is that you're going to rank top 1, top 2, top 3. Not guaranteed, but the higher the likelihood, because nothing's guaranteed in business, right? Or in life in general. And myth 4 is Google will figure it out eventually. If your site has technical issues, Google is not going to go out of its way to try and make sense of it. Like, it has no incentive to do that when there are millions, tens of millions of users that are actively trying to outrank the other, right? Google is not incentivized to fix it for you. So now that we've cleared that up, let's dive into the actual work. Site speed and performance. So we already know why site speed matters in terms of user experience, rankings, and conversions. But what is fast? Earlier, we already stated that if your page takes longer than 5 seconds to load, about 53% of people will just leave the page entirely. So in order to measure this, we're going to use a page called Google Page Speed Insights, which is a free tool to test your website. And we're going to aim for a score of 80% or higher. So once you're there, I've even linked it in the document here that you can do it, pagespeed.web.dev. You can do this right now. Enter your website URL and click Analyze. Google will test your site on both mobile and desktop and give you a score from 0 to 100. You'll also get a list of specific issues slowing down your site and recommendations for how to fix them. Again, in the age of AI, you can simply have your AI. My own is Claude. I use Claude. I like Claude more. You can just ask it to optimize your website for speed and performance, and it will take care of that for you. But pay attention to both the mobile and desktop scores. We'll focus on mobile first because, as I mentioned, about 70 to 80% of your users are going to be on their phones, right? So take care of that, fix that, you're good. When you run the test, you'll see a score and a bunch of technical terms. Don't panic. Here's what matters. Green, which is what you're aiming for, you want nothing less than green, means that your site is fast. It's as fast as it can be. Excellent work if this is the case. But you might still have small improvements to make, but generally, I can't speak today, you're in good shape, right? Yellow, of course, is terrible. Red is terrible. I'm not even going to go over these. I just put them there just in case you fall into one of these brackets. But, you're aiming for green. And that's what we're going to go over in this document. Nothing less. If it's less than green, it might as well not be there. So, quick win number 1 that you can do today. Just optimize your images. The number 1 thing slowing down most websites are the images. Large, unoptimized images can make your site crawl, and not in the good way, right? Not crawl index ranking, but crawl as in be very slow. So before you upload any image to your site, just compress it. You can use a free tool like TinyPNG or Scoosh. And these tools reduce the file size without making the image look worse, so they retain the quality of the image. Aim for images under 200 kilobytes each. And if you have images that are 2 megabytes or 3 megabytes, then they're way too big. Also, use the right formats. For photos, you can use JPEGs. For graphics and logos, use PNG. For simple icons, you can use SVG. So if you have for example, on my site, I have the logo for ChatGPT, Claude, etc. because we help local businesses rank on these AIs. I use SVGs for those. So that maintains the speed and quality of my site. That one change can cut your load time in half, by the way. Next, you want to enable browser caching, which basically tells a visitor's web browser to save parts of your website on their computer. So when they come back to your site later, it loads faster because their browser doesn't have to download everything again. If you're on WordPress, you can install a free plugin like WordPress Super Cache or W3 Total Cache, and these plugins enable caching with just a few clicks. Most of you aren't going to be on Shopify, but if you are, it's already enabled by default, so you don't need to do anything. And if you're on a custom built site, just ask your developer to enable caching in your server settings. Next up is Minify CSS and JavaScript. Now, again, this is more technical stuff. This is like some coding lingo. If you have a web dev that doesn't already do this and know how to do this, then again, feel free to put this into AI. It will do it for you. There are some plugins that you can use on WordPress. Similarly on Shopify, the app already does this. And then again, if you have a dev, they should be the ones doing this. But this is very technical stuff. It just means that, hey, you have extra spaces, line breaks, and comments that don't necessarily need to be there and they're inflating the code. We can get rid of them. That's all it means. So use a CDN, which just means Content Delivery Network. It's a service that stores copies of your website on servers all around the world, so that when someone visits your site, the CDN serves them the copy from the server closest to them. Now, Cloudflare offers a free CDN that's easy to set up. And this is why I host all of my client sites on Cloudflare. Our website scores are almost always 95 to 100. Not almost always, they are always 95 to 100. And of course, our SEO is the best that it can possibly be. And Cloudflare just makes the entire process easy while being able to maintain all of the foundational aspects of it. WordPress is still amazing, don't get me wrong, just a bit more technical and typically requires someone of, who has that experience in order to get through with it. But yeah, feel free to do this. So part 3, which is super important, is mobile optimization. Now, mobile first indexing. In 2019, Google switched to something called mobile first indexing, which basically means that Google now looks at the mobile version of your website first when deciding how to rank you. This is why I hammer the importance of something like mobile first. Because even if you're running ads, which let's disregard SEO for a little bit, even if you're running ads, most of your traffic is going to come from mobile. So if you're not mobile optimized, forget about ranking. You're probably going to see inflated metrics on your cost per lead, your cost per click, your CTRs, etc., just because of how poorly your site is designed mobilely. So if your site doesn't work well on mobile, you're not going to rank well, like full stop. It doesn't matter how good your desktop site is. If it's not mobile optimized, just forget about it. So now here's how you can test your mobile responsiveness to know if you're actually mobily optimized, right? Open your site on your phone and run Lighthouse in Chrome DevTools for a mobile audit. Just search it up in Google on your phone, Lighthouse in Chrome. You should also test your site yourself by pulling out your phone right now and just visit your website, click around, determine how long it took for the site to load, and try to read the text. Just try to click the buttons too. Is it easy to use, or are you zooming in and struggling to tap the right thing? If any of these are present or you feel like this is happening to you, that probably means that your site isn't mobily optimized. Run this test. So here are a couple common mobile issues. Number 1, the text is too small. One of the most common mobile issues is that text is too small to read without zooming in. Especially if your target audience is much older, you need to optimize for bigger text so that they'll be able to read it and understand it. If they have to continuously pinch and zoom to read it, then again, they're just going to go to another website that offers something similar or a similar service and is just a better experience for them. Remember, they're optimizing for experience. So check your website on your phone. Can you easily read the text, or do you have to zoom in? If you're on WordPress, your theme should handle this automatically. Again, custom CSS, we can set small font sizes. You can change that. Or most web builders like Wix and Squarespace just handle this automatically, right? Do all of these, check it on your phone, you'll know in a couple seconds. Common issue number 2 for mobile is your buttons are too close together. On a phone, you're tapping with your finger, which is much less precise than clicking with a mouse. If your buttons are too close together, people might accidentally tap the wrong thing, which of course you would understand is incredibly frustrating and makes people leave your site. Google recommends that tap targets should be at least 48 pixels tall and have at least 8 pixels of space around them. So this just means you need to give the buttons enough space so that you won't fat finger something, right? Again, super easy to test. Do it on your site. If you fat finger something, then you have an issue. Now, the content is wider than the screen, right? Sometimes websites have content that's wider than the phone screen. So this forces people to scroll sideways, which again is terrible for user experience. I'm sure you've experienced this because I definitely have, right? The fix is to make sure that all your content is responsive. So for example, you're making sure that once it goes on mobile, it may look good on desktop, but it won't necessarily look good on mobile. You're making sure that all of the content is responsive so that when you're on mobile, these images, this text, etc. will still basically look good on it. Right? That's probably the easier way to explain it. Now, as you can see here, test your site on your phone and just make sure you never have to scroll sideways. You fix that, again, better user experience, better ranking. So how do you fix mobile issues in its entirety? These are the most common ones, but how do you do this? If you're on WordPress, the easiest fix is to switch to a modern mobile responsive theme, because most themes built in the last 5 years are mobile friendly by default. If you're on Shopify, Wix, or Squarespace, your site should already be mobile responsive. These platforms are built with mobile in mind, which is why most people tend to go with them. But if you're on a custom built site and you're having mobile issues, you'll probably need a developer. Dev is just developer for short, and it's to make sure your site is responsive. The good news is that once your site is mobile responsive, it stays that way, so you don't have to keep fixing it. Basically a one-time fix, unless you mix something up in the code or something. Let's move on to crawlability and indexation. So remember the 3-step process, which is crawling, indexing, and ranking. Crawling is step 1. Google sends out bots that visit your website and follows links from page to page. But Google doesn't crawl every page on the internet every day. That would be impossible. Instead, Google has something called a crawl budget for each website. Your crawl budget is basically how many pages Google will crawl on your site in a given time period. So if you have a small site with 20 pages, Google will probably crawl all of them regularly. But if you have a huge site with 10,000 pages, Google might only crawl a portion of them each time, which is why some people tend to trim the amount of pages that they have in order to fit within this crawl budget and ensure that Google regularly is indexing their pages and that nothing is left out, right? Because Googlebot follows links, it does not guess. Well, a bit of an error there in my diagram. Disregard that. But yeah, if Google can't crawl a page, as we mentioned earlier, that page can't be indexed. And if it's not indexed, it can't rank. It's that simple. There are lots of reasons why Google might not be able to crawl a page. Maybe you accidentally blocked it. Maybe there are no links pointing to it. Or maybe your site structure is simply confusing. The good news is that most crawlability issues are easy to fix once you know what to look for. And we're going to walk through the most common issues and how to fix them. So let's start with robots.txt. I mentioned this earlier, but every website has a file called robots.txt. This file tells search engine bots which pages they're allowed to crawl and which pages they should skip. Think of it like a do not enter sign. You can use robots.txt to block Google from crawling certain pages, like your admin login page or your shopping cart. But the problem is that sometimes people accidentally block important pages. I've seen websites that accidentally blocked their entire site from Google, right? I am not joking. So once you understand this, you understand why they aren't ranking or why they weren't ranking. You can view your robots.txt file by going to yourwebsite.com/robots.txt. So pleiadesconsultancy.com/robots.txt and just replace your website with your actual domain, right? So once you look at your robots.txt file, you'll see some technical looking text, but don't worry, you'll understand all of it. You don't even need to. Just look for lines that say disallow. These are the pages that are blocked from Google. You should see things like this, disallow/admin or disallow/cart. These are the pages that you don't want Google crawling. But if you see disallow with just a / and nothing after, that's bad, because you're blocking Google from crawling your entire site. So if you see any important pages blocked, you need to remove those lines from your robots.txt file. And if this is being done on your website, but you don't have access to the back end, or maybe you just don't know how to do it, one, you can ask your dev, or you should probably hire somebody to do that if you don't know how to do it yourself because you don't want to mess up your site. Or again, just hire me, right? So a sitemap is something like a roadmap for your site, which you can submit to Google and have them crawl your site. If you can't find your sitemap, then I'll show you how to create one. But every website should have one, because most website platforms create one automatically. But again, if you don't have one, which you can usually find at yourwebsite.com/sitemap.xml, then I'm going to show you how to create one and then of course submit it. So if you're on WordPress, then the Yoast SEO plugin, which most of you on WordPress already have, these already create a sitemap automatically. Same thing for Shopify, it's done automatically. Wix and Squarespace, same thing. But once you have the sitemap, you need to submit it to GSC, which stands for Google Search Console, which we'll cover how to do that in part 9 when we set up Google Search Console. But by submitting your sitemap, you're telling Google, like, hey, these are all my pages, please crawl them. Don't leave anything behind, right? Very easy. So understanding crawl errors is another thing that you need to have in mind, because if you don't know what each error means, then you don't know what to fix. So you have 404 errors, which typically means that this Google tried to visit the page, but the page doesn't exist anymore. So once a page doesn't exist, it goes down for whatever reason, you should be redirected to a 404, which will eventually bring you back to the main site. But this just means that the link is broken, right? And broken links are not good for any site. So it basically wastes your crawl budget and creates a bad user experience if you have 404s. And the crawl budget is as thin as it is. We don't want to maintain such errors. So I'll show you how to find these once again in part 9. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. So sometimes you have multiple pages on your site that are very similar or even identical. So what you do is you add canonical tags, which is a piece of code that tells Google that this is the main version of this page. If you see other similar pages, ignore them and focus on this one. So maybe you have a product that comes in 3 colors. You might have 3 separate pages, one for each color, but the content is pretty much identical. You can use a canonical tag to tell Google the red version is the main page. Don't worry about the blue and green versions. So you already know when to use it just based off of that example. If you have duplicates or very similar content that you can't avoid, employ canonical tags. So common examples would include stuff like product variations, printer-friendly versions of pages, or pages that can be accessed through multiple URLs. So Noindex and Nofollow tags. So sometimes you might have pages on your site that you don't want Google to index at all. Maybe it's a thank you page, for example, that people only see after filling out a form, or maybe it's a test page. You can use a Noindex tag to tell Google, don't put this page in my index. There's also a nofollow tag for links, which tells Google, don't follow this link or give it any SEO value. You usually don't need to worry about these tags unless you have a specific reason to use them. And most pages should be indexed and most links should be followed. So don't worry about it too much. Now let's talk about site architecture and internal linking. So this is just a fancy term for how your website is organized. It's the structure of your pages and how they connect to each other. So good site architecture makes it easy for both visitors and Google to find what they're looking for. Bad site architecture makes everything confusing, because think of your website like a building. The home page is the front door. From there, you should be able to easily get to any room in the building without getting lost. If someone has to click through 7 different pages to find what they want, your architecture is poor. So here's the 3-click rule that I use for every single client site that I build. We want to make sure that click 1 is the home page to a category page, click 2 is category to subcategory, and click 3 is subcategory to the final page. If it takes more clicks than this, the page is buried and Google may treat it as unimportant, which means you have to restructure your site, which is a huge undertaking, right? Now, what is internal linking? Internal linking means linking from one page on your website to another page on your website. So if you have a blog post about dog training and you mention dog food, you might link to your page about dog food. That's an internal link. Internal linking is important for 2 reasons. It helps visitors navigate your site and find related content, which adds to your site architecture, and it also helps Google understand which pages on your site are most important. When you link to a page, you're telling Google this page is important. So if you link to your home page, very important. If you link to a supporting page for your blog, very important. The more internal links a page has, the more important Google thinks it is. So how do we create good internal links? It's pretty simple. Whenever you mention a topic that you have another page about, just link to that page. Use descriptive anchor text. That's the clickable text of the link. So instead of click here, use text that describes what the link is about. So instead of to learn more about dog training, click here. Say, learn more about dog training techniques. Simple, right? This helps both visitors and Google understand what the linked page is about. Aim to have at least, 2 to 3 internal links on every page of your site, especially on your blogs. Because internal linking also determines whether a page is indexed properly by Google. So you can increase the rate of indexation just by having strategically placed internal links, right? Don't sleep on this. This is super important. So what's link juice, right? It sounds kind of weird when you say it out loud. But when a page has backlinks from other websites, it has what SEOs, which just means search engine optimizers, call link juice or PageRank. This is authority that can be passed to other pages through internal links. So think of it like water flowing through pipes. If your homepage has a lot of backlinks, it has a lot of link juice. When you link from your homepage to another page, some of that juice flows to that page. This is why your homepage is usually your highest ranking page, because it has the most backlinks and the most link juice by strategically internal linking. You can spread that link juice to your most important pages through this process. Now, what are orphan pages? An orphan page is a page on your website that, you guessed it, has no internal links pointing to it. It's basically isolated. So these are terrible, and you want to ensure that every page on your site has at least one internal link pointing to it from another page. I'll show you how to find orphan pages in part 11 when we do a full technical audit. But yeah, an orphan page is an island with no bridge, nothing to connect it to. So here's creating a logical URL structure. So your URL should be clean and descriptive, because a good URL tells you what the page is about just by looking at it. So instead of having page, $ID equal 12345, dog-training.tip-tips. Super easy, right? Keep them short and simple and just make them easy to read. Very clean. Use hyphens to separate words. Don't use underscores because they're harder to see in the URL bar. And use lowercase letters because, again, it's just cleaner. Once URLs have been published, avoid changing them. If you don't need to change a URL, just set up a redirect from the old URL to the new one. Otherwise, you'll get those 404 errors we talked about before, which of course is dastardly for your ranking. Now, you may have heard of breadcrumbs before, and it's not the kind that you eat. These are little navigation links that you see at the top of some pages that show you where you are in the site structure. So home, then blog, then dog training, then how to teach your dog to sit. And at any given point, you can click on home to go back to the home page, or blog to click to go back to the blog page. So most website themes have an option to enable breadcrumbs, but if yours doesn't, you can usually add them with a plugin if you're on WordPress, or by asking your dev. So let's talk about schema markup and structured data. I'm sure most of you have heard of schema in the past, so let's get into what it actually is. It's basically code that you add to your website that helps Google understand what your content is about. And there are many different types of schema out there that we're going to go over, but you're probably most familiar with homepage schema, FAQ schema, and article schema, right? Schema matters because you can get rich snippets in Google search results. And rich snippets are those enhanced results that show extra information. So for example, if you search for a recipe, you might see results that show the star rating, cooking time, and a photo right in the search results. That's because of your schema markup. And these rich snippets get more clicks than regular results, which makes them stand out and provide more information upfront, which of course results in more users and subsequently, in the case of business, more business. Not every website uses schema markup, which means if you do, you have a competitive advantage that way, right? So as I mentioned, there are a couple types of schema that matter. Local business schema, product schema, article schema, FAQ schema, and review schema. We'll focus on the most important ones for most businesses, especially local. So how do we actually implement schema markup? It's written in a format called JSON, which is basically code, but you don't need to write it yourself because Google has a free tool called the Structured Data Markup Helper. Just search for it on Google, you'll find it. You enter your URL, select the type of schema you want to add, and then click on elements on your page to tag them. Google generates the code for you. Then you just copy that code and paste it into your website's HTML. If this sounds like rocket science to you, get a dev to do it, have me do it, linked in the description below. Or if you're on WordPress, you can just use a plugin like Rank Math or Schema Pro to add schema without touching the code, right? So if you have a physical business location, local business schema is essential. It tells Google your business name, address, phone number, hours, and more. This information can show up in Google Maps and in the knowledge panel when people search for your business. To add local business schema, use Google's Structured Data Markup Helper, or a WordPress plugin like Rank Math. You'll need to provide your business name, address, phone number, business type, hours of operation, and any other relevant information. But once you add it, test it with Google's rich results test to make sure it's working. If you have a local business, then this is essential. If you don't have this, then it's going to be very unfortunate for your rankings. But if you sell products online, product schema, again, is a must. It shows the product name, price, availability, and reviews in search results. Again, the process is pretty streamlined, and for most of you watching this, product schema is not going to be a thing, but this guide is meant to be holistic for every single person. Take you from A to Z. Now, FAQ schema shows your frequently asked questions directly in Google search results. This takes up a lot of space on the page and pushes competitors down. It's one of the easiest types of schema to implement and one of the most effective. So to add FAQ schema, create a page or section with your FAQs. Then use Google's Structured Data Markup Helper or a WordPress plugin to add the schema. Each question and answer pair needs to be marked up separately. Test it with Google's rich results test to make sure it's working correctly. Once again, just like clockwork. So after you add your schema markup, you just need to test that it's working. Go to Google's rich results test. I've said that quite a few times, right? But super important, just search for it on Google or go to this Google search in the document. Again, if you need this and all my 8 other documents for free, feel free to get it linked in the description below or pinned in the comment section of this video. Enter your URL and click Test URL. Google will show you if your schema is valid and what rich results you're eligible for. If you see errors, the tool will tell you what's wrong and how to fix it. But once your schema is working, it can take a few weeks for Google to start showing rich results in search. Now, let's talk about HTTPS and security. We'll go over this one very briefly because for the most part, it should already be done. This pretty much just means HTTPS, Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. And if your site doesn't use HTTPS, you need to fix this immediately because it's going to show that it's not secure in Google Chrome, which a majority of people use. And in order to do this, you're going to find out what is called an SSL. An SSL certificate, which most of you probably saw when you were purchasing your domain, and your domain is just, let's say it's johnsplumbing.com is your domain. You get an SSL certificate from the domain provider. Maybe you use GoDaddy, maybe you use Cloudflare or Ionos or one of these. You need this in order to make sure that your HTTPS is working. If it's not working, you're going to see it if you type in your site and Google says that the site is not secure. That means that you have an issue with your HTTPS and your SSL. And if this is not fixed, then nobody's going to your site because nobody wants danger, right? They don't want to go into something that could potentially be dangerous. So all you need to do to get this, which is usually free, is one, on Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, if you're using any of these, it's already included. But on WordPress, your host almost certainly offers like Let's Encrypt at pretty much no cost. It's free. And if you don't get it, then your host will sell you one for, at minimum, it's $10. So make sure you get that. Once that's done, for the migration, this is mainly for your web dev, or you can hire somebody to do this to make sure that the migration is in order. And it's a simple test once you're done. Once it's been properly updated, you can just go and visit your site and it should give you a new message, right? So make sure you don't make these common HTTPS mistakes. And yeah, you should be good. Again, I'm not going to go into depth into that because that's more of software devs, right? So what are core web vitals? Once you did, or if you ran the speed test that I told you to, you're going to see a couple of terms like LCP, which means largest contentful paint, interaction to next paint, and cumulative layout shift. This is what you describe, or we describe, as core web vitals, and it directly influences the performance of your page in terms of how it loads and how interactive it is. So your LCP, in order to improve this is where you optimize your images and you use the CDNs, both of which we spoke about earlier in the guide. This will improve your server response times and as a result, your page speed. Your INP, which is interaction to next paint, is pretty much the minimizing of your CSS, which again, we spoke about earlier. These are just more of the technical terms for it. We want to optimize for under 200 ms based on the score that you're going to receive. If you're over 500, then this means that your site is basically broken, right? And then lastly, your CLS, which is in regards to, once again, your images, your videos, and your proper fonts. To make sure that this is working properly, we're looking for a CLS of under 0.1 seconds. Anything above a second, yeah, that means that your site is broken, and you can just apply all of the fixes that we've already spoken about in the doc. So how do you measure core web vitals? Well, of course, number one is using Google PageSpeed Insights. You heard about this earlier in the guide. It's free. Just enter your URL and run the test. You can scroll down to diagnostics, that section in the PageSpeed Insights, to see the score on all three. Again, we're aiming for green. If they're not green, then you're doing something wrong and it needs to be fixed. You can also look at GSC, which is Google Search Console, or Chrome DevTools, get the same result. So again, improving your core web vitals, your CWVs, is just optimizing your images, enabling caching, which you can do through plugins for WordPress or through implementations via custom code. If you have that option available to you, get your dev to do it. Minify your CSS, which is your code, and use a CDN, which is basically for free on Cloudflare. So now we're on to GSC, Google Search Console Setup, many of which I'm sure we're waiting on this. It's probably the most important SEO tool that you can use, and it's completely free because it tells you which pages are indexed, which keywords you're ranking for, and how many people are clicking your results. And of course, what technical issues Google has found. If you don't have it set up yet, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do it. Essentially, all you're going to do is go to setup at googlesearchconsole.com. Here's a link. You're going to click add property, and you're going to enter your website URL. Make sure to include the HTTPS part, by the way, as I'm sure now that your SSL has been properly set up and your HTTPS is working, you can do this. It's going to ask you for multiple ways to verify the website. The easiest one is probably just to add a DNS record if you have access to your domain, or just get your dev or whoever has access to your domain to set it up. Or if you're on WordPress, you can just use a plugin like Rank Math, right, to do it. Once your property is verified, you can just go in and submit your XML sitemap. On the side of the screen, you should see sitemap. I'm actually going to update the guide to show you exactly what it looks like, as opposed to some of my images here that I've created. But you're going to see something to the left of the screen, which shows your sitemaps. Go to the sitemap, enter your sitemap URL, and just click submit. I already showed you how to get your sitemap URL if you don't already have it as well. So you should be good there. Go back in the video if you don't know how to do that, by the way. There should be in your Google Search Console a page indexing report as well, which will show you which pages are not indexed, are indexed or not yet crawled by Google. By knowing specifically what's happening with your pages, you're also going to know what issue you need to fix on each page, whether it's thin content or broken links, so on and so forth. So click on the error section to see which pages have problems, as I mentioned earlier. If submitted URL not found, it means that a page in your sitemap doesn't exist. Or your server error means that your server had a problem when Google tried to crawl the page. For each error, Google tells you which pages are affected. So click on the error to see the list, then you can just fix the issue accordingly now that you know what all of these errors mean. After fixing the errors, just click validate fix, and Google will recrawl those pages. Now, the performance report is going to show you which keywords you're ranking for and how many people are clicking your results. So go to the performance page and you'll see a graph that's going to show you how exactly you're ranking. These are opportunities to improve your titles and descriptions. If you look for keywords where you have a lot of impressions but few clicks, this will usually show itself in, let's say you have 100,000 impressions but only 0.7 click-through rate. That means that your titles and your descriptions need to be optimized. Now you can also just use your URL inspection tool, which is, it's almost like a URL bar in Search Console. Again, I'm going to update this so you'll see exactly what it looks like. You can search for a specific page that hasn't been indexed, and after making the changes that you need, you can just request indexing, and Google will prioritize crawling that page, which means you'll have a better likelihood of the page being indexed and seen by not only Google, but also AI. Never forget that they work in tandem with each other. Now, Search Console actually has a mobile usability report. I pretty much already went through everything here in regards to mobile usability and how you can test it for yourself. But if you want additional insights, again, you can run Lighthouse, as I mentioned earlier, or you can use Google Search Console's mobile usability report. Now, let's talk about platform-specific technical SEO. Now, for WordPress, for the most part, you can get through all of this with these two options for good plugins, which is Yoast SEO, which almost everybody has, of course, and Rank Math, right? Install one of these plugins, go through the setup wizard. It will ask you a couple questions about your site, and then it will configure everything for you so that you're already taken care of SEO-wise. WordPress also has other plugins that I went over for speed optimization, like WordPress Super Cache, which takes care of caching, which basically means that your website will load faster. Image optimization, so that again, technically, your LCP, largest contentful paint, will be taken care of because you're optimizing your images, which will allow them to load faster. Again, make sure that they're about 200 kilobytes, never more than 2 to 3 megabytes, right? That's terrible. Shopify, not going to go too in depth into this one because it takes care of everything for you. But for any of those, for any of you watching that are interested in this, again, you can just get this document linked in the description below and go through it at your leisure. So yeah, everything Shopify taken care of. Wix and Squarespace, I really do not like these website builders, but if you have to use them, if you're already on them, again, these are typically already taken care of and are already SEO optimized. So there isn't really much that you have to do. Just be aware of all of these things. So in the event you need to conduct an audit, you can do it with confidence. And then for custom built sites, many of you probably aren't working with it, which is for the best. They're a bit more technical. You are allowed way more freedom in terms of customizability and what you can actually do with the site. But of course, as you can imagine, it's not as user-friendly as something like WordPress. So unless you have a dev, I would skip this one entirely. Now, in this document, I've included a technical SEO audit checklist that you can go through at your leisure. You can take care of why you need an audit, how to do it, and how to prioritize fixing these issues, which we went over throughout this entire doc. You can get all the tools you'll need, free and paid, in case you want a bit more optimization and a bit more taken care of for you in terms of complexity. And then it goes through step by step what you should do to take care of these audits, from indexation to site speed, to mobile usability, to crawlability, to schema markup, HTTPS and SSL, your core web vitals, and prioritizing your fixes. So this checklist you can go through at your leisure on your own time through this document. I'm not going to go through it in this video because we basically took care of all of that. But use this document, go through it by yourself, and make sure that all of these are well documented and taken care of. Now, just to take care of maintenance and monitoring, here are some weekly tasks that you should be doing, monthly tasks that you should be doing, quarterly, and at a certain point, it just becomes a matter of repetition and consistency. So here's your 7-day action plan. Take care of your setup and audit, fix your critical speed issues, fix your mobile issues, and if I'm going too fast, feel free to slow the video down or pause it, or again, just get the document. Fix your crawlability issues, add your schema markup, improve internal linking, and set up monitoring. By the end of today and watching this video, you should have all of this done. And in conclusion, it might seem overwhelming at first, but it's really just a series of small manageable tasks that can be broken down into a checklist that is done through a specific order. So you now have everything you need to optimize your site's technical SEO. The only question is, will you actually do it? Now, I'll also do this for you. In the event you understand everything or simply just don't want to do it, you don't have the time to do it, or you don't have the desire, book a call with us and let's see if we'd be a good fit to work with each other. This is going to be the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and check out one of my other videos detailing one of my documents. Again, if you want this document and all of my others, feel free to get it linked in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.